Welcome to today's video, where we'll explore shocking stories about teenage offenders and brutal murder shootings. These incidents not only leave us stunned by the cruelty of the acts, but also raise questions about the causes and consequences of the increasing violence in society. Let's dive into these horrifying cases and the tragic stories behind shootings that are unimaginable to better understand the world that victims face and reflect on the future of the younger generation. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on other shocking stories in the future. Juan Rodriguez faces charges of attempted murder and threatening Judge Beatrice Butchko during a hearing in South Florida. Rodriguez appeared in court for stabbing Nadine Morris, a nurse's assistant at an assisted living community in North Miami. When Judge Butchko refused his request for release, Rodriguez angrily threatened, "Listen to me. Don't let me out of here. I will kill you. I am Jewish. I will take your life." After the judge ignored his request, Rodriguez repeated the threats and demanded the judge's phone number, shouting, "What do you want from me? What do you want? What is her phone number? If you don't let me out of here, I will kill you." Rodriguez was ultimately detained without bail and faces first-degree murder charges. Randall Moore was convicted of murder and assaulting his mother-in-law. He expressed no remorse for killing his estranged wife, Theron Lynn Moore, and blamed his circumstances. Moore admitted that the death of his wife could have been prevented, saying everything could have been avoided if he had been allowed to see his children. He stated, "It could all have been avoided. Just let me see my children now." He insulted his mother-in-law, Teresa and Sheila Lynch, calling them losers and claiming that they hated him. Moore also demanded his mother-in-law read his daughter's diary to prove she hated her. Moore was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms and 25 years for shooting a police officer. Keith Allen Ferguson, 40, from Michigan, was a brutal murderer. On November 18, 2014, Ferguson killed his wife, Tiffany Ferguson, in front of their 4 children. After committing the murder, Ferguson donned a bulletproof vest, gathered weapons and explosives, and went to his father-in-law's house, James Webber, to kill him. Ferguson didn't stop there. He continued his rampage by holding a 59-year-old woman hostage for 7 hours before releasing her and surrendering to the police. During the attack, Ferguson had planned to escape and commit further crimes, but his actions were quickly thwarted. When the police arrived, Ferguson was arrested without further incident. In court, Ferguson admitted to the murder and other brutal actions. He was convicted on multiple charges, including first-degree and second-degree murder, kidnapping, and illegal possession of weapons and explosives intended for criminal use. Ferguson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, with the court ruling that he would never be released due to the extremely violent nature of his crimes. The court emphasized that his actions not only impacted the immediate victims, but also caused deep harm to the victims' families and the community in which he lived. Deobra Redden, 30, attacked Judge Mary Kay Huss during a sentencing hearing at a courthouse in Las Vegas. Redden, who had pleaded guilty to assault, requested probation and mentioned his new job. However, when the judge denied his request, Redden became enraged, shouted, jumped over the bench, and struggled with the judge. Shocking footage from the courtroom was quickly shared on social media. Judge Huss was injured and required medical attention. A court sheriff and the judge's law clerk were also injured in the attack. Redden, who has a history of serious crimes such as domestic violence and robbery, faces multiple charges including attempted murder and assault. Redden's lawyer argued that he should be declared not guilty due to his schizophrenia diagnosis. Redden's foster mother supported this claim, stating that Redden had been struggling with mental health issues since childhood. After the attack, Redden was sentenced to 19 to 48 months in prison. On October 2, 2019, Ricky Bernard Brown took 5 employees hostage at the South Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation Center in Newberry, armed with a handgun. When police arrived, Brown fired a shot into the ceiling. 2 hostages escaped through a back door, and 2 others managed to flee safely after an hour of negotiations. Brown eventually released the last hostage, and the SWAT team stormed the building. He fired a few more shots before being arrested. Fortunately, no one was injured. Brown has a lengthy criminal history, including a manslaughter conviction in 1997 that led to a 20-year prison sentence. After being released, he was a suspect in a murder case in Newberry in April 2019, but the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. Following the hostage situation in October 2019, Brown faced several serious charges, including kidnapping, firearm possession in a violent crime, resisting arrest, and threatening a law enforcement officer. Brown claimed he was dealing with mental health issues and had sought help 3 times but received no assistance. During his bond hearing, he made a threatening comment to a police officer, which led to an additional charge. He was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Should have been on the front line. I should have shot you.
On June 6, 2021, Isaiah Gardenhire, 40, went on a crime spree in Michigan that lasted 45 hours. Gardenhire murdered 13-year-old Adri Dembowski and sexually assaulted several women. Gardenhire was the boyfriend of Adri's mother, Tiffany Dembowski. He attacked Tiffany first and then stabbed Adri to death. After fleeing, he hid in an empty apartment before breaking into another apartment, where he took 2 people hostage, sexually assaulted one, and stole their car. During his trial, Gardenhire acted in a disruptive and crude manner, causing the hearing to be cut short. Gardenhire pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, unlawful imprisonment, and assault with a dangerous weapon. He was sentenced to 75 to 120 years in prison, and another 50 to 125 years for the murders of Harley Owens and Kelsey Lennon. Gardenhire showed no remorse for his actions and was described as a remorseless killer. Tyler Dazey, from Dubuque, Iowa, was charged and convicted of killing his mother, Jennifer Dazey, and the family dog Echo in January 2024. Dazey claimed he did it because he believed his mother was using witchcraft against him. During the trial, which began in July 2024, Tyler refused to participate and compared the trial to slavery, writing in a letter to the court that he did not want to be involved and was only seeking a connection with God. Although Tyler was absent from court, his attorney objected to the evidence presented by the prosecution, which included crime scene photos and the axe used in the killings, which had Jennifer's blood and Tyler's fingerprints on it. Tyler's sister, Kylie, recounted the changes in him before and after he killed their mother and the dog. Kylie felt helpless in the face of his actions, while Tyler mocked and cursed at her, demanding that she read the Bible. Ultimately, Tyler was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kylie later stated that she believed her brother had a mental illness and should be treated at a mental health facility rather than imprisoned. Shondell Jackson was convicted of murdering Nathan Potter in 2009 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. At the time, Jackson and his accomplice Derek Thomas planned to rob Potter, a 21-year-old student. During the robbery, when they discovered that Potter had no money, Jackson shot him. After shooting Potter, Jackson and Thomas fled the scene, leaving Potter severely injured. Potter later died from the gunshot wounds. Throughout the trial, Jackson showed no remorse for his actions. In fact, he mocked the victim's family, laughing in their faces in the courtroom. When the sentence was handed down, Jackson reacted violently, leading to his being subdued with pepper spray. Jackson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trial, Jackson's family caused a disturbance, expressing hatred towards the Potter family. However, one notable detail is that Jackson's uncle, who had turned him into the police after he had fled, believed the sentence was fair and just. Jackson's uncle felt that his nephew's actions were unforgivable and that the sentence was a proper punishment for the crime committed. Quincy J. Tuttle, an 11-year-old sixth grader from Vancouver, Washington, was arrested after bringing a handgun, ammunition, and kitchen knives to school on October 23, 2013. He intended to use them against a student who had been bullying his friend. Tuttle was caught after his mother reported missing kitchen knives, suspecting he had taken them. Parole officers and a psychologist were concerned about public safety and advised that Tuttle be detained until a mental health evaluation could be completed. Tuttle reacted angrily, cursing at the court commissioner and refusing to leave the courtroom. He was initially charged with several serious offenses, including attempted assault, weapon possession, and bringing weapons to school. The prosecutors later dropped the murder charges as part of a plea deal, and Tuttle was sentenced to 2 years in juvenile detention and 2 years of probation. Dexter Johnson, currently serving time in Texas, was convicted of murdering 2 people in Harris County in 2006 when he was just 18. Johnson and 4 other teenagers hijacked the car of 23-year-old Maria Aries and her 17-year-old boyfriend. They forced the couple into the car, drove them to a remote area, and then Johnson and another teenager shot both victims. These murders were part of a 25-day crime spree that included 3 other murders. Johnson was sentenced to death. During the trial, Johnson threw a chair in the courtroom, insisting on his innocence and blaming his lawyer for his situation. His defense argued that he should not face the death penalty due to intellectual disability and schizophrenia, providing evidence that he had an IQ of 70 and struggled with basic skills. Despite this, the jury sentenced him to death. Webb, a convicted murderer from Kentucky, became infamous for spitting at Judge Vanessa Dixon during his trial in August 2009. The incident was televised and spread widely on the internet, leading to Webb being charged with threatening a judicial officer. Webb admitted to killing 2 of his ex-girlfriends, including Bria Runit, in 2009, for which he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He was also charged with killing Sabrina Marie Vaughn, whose body was found in 2010, 7 years after she went missing. Webb had a lengthy criminal record starting in 2000, with charges including attempting to escape from police and assaulting a corrections officer. He was sentenced to 15 years for assaulting a corrections officer and 37 years for attempting to kill 2 law enforcement officers. Joseph Zieler was convicted of the murders of 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her 32-year-old babysitter, Lisa, in 1990. The case remained unsolved for many years until 2016, when Zieler's DNA was linked to the crime scene. Prior to this, Zieler had been arrested for assaulting his stepson And during the investigation, a connection was made between him and the murders. During the trial, Zieler's ex-girlfriend, Bonnie, testified that he had no memory issues, despite Zieler's own claims to the contrary, stating that he had no recollection of events related to the crime. Zieler admitted to having a relationship with Robin's mother, but denied ever meeting the victims. However, he wrote a letter to the Cornell family, blaming one of his relatives for the crimes. In addition to the legal disputes, Zieler displayed disruptive behavior throughout the trial, shouting at the jury and even elbowing his defense attorney in the face. This caused tension in the courtroom. Ultimately, the jury convicted Zieler and sentenced him to death for each victim. On February 14, 2018, T.J. Lane carried out a school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where he was a former student. He used an AR-15 rifle to shoot students and staff, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others. Lane blended into the chaos and attempted to escape, but was eventually arrested after more than an hour. During his trial, Lane showed no remorse for his actions. In fact, on the day of his sentencing, he entered the courtroom and quickly unbuttoned his shirt to reveal a killer t-shirt, a replica of the outfit he wore during the shooting. Even the harsh words from the victim's parents could not make him feel any sympathy. One father angrily stated, "If I had the choice, you would die a slow and painful death." Lane was ultimately sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Frank Deleon Jr., 19, is the suspect in the murder of 15-year-old Diamond Alvarez, a tragic event that occurred on January 11, 2022. At the time, Diamond left home to meet Frank, her boyfriend, after discovering that he had been cheating on her. She decided to confront him at a park, where they met to talk. After this meeting, Diamond was last seen alive. Diamond's body was later found with 22 gunshot wounds. The severe injuries from the gunshots caused her to die on the spot. Frank Deleon Jr. immediately became the prime suspect in the case. After a few days of investigation, Deleon was arrested and formally charged with murder. During the trial, Deleon faced harsh criticism from the victim's family. Diamond's mother, Anna Machado, lost control of her emotions and rushed toward Deleon in the courtroom, leading to a chaotic confrontation between her and the defendant. This scene sparked anger and sorrow among the family and those present in the courtroom. In the end, Frank Deleon Jr. pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to 45 years in prison. This sentence was not only a punishment for his brutal actions, but also a reminder of the pain that violent acts can inflict on families. Nicholas Cruz, a mass shooter, carried out a shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School on February 14, 2018, killing 17 students and injuring 17 others. Cruz, a former student at the school, legally purchased an AR-15 rifle and used it to attack the victims without any clear motive. After being arrested, Cruz stated that he carried out the shooting on Valentine's Day because he felt no one loved him. During his trial, the victims' families expressed their fury and anger toward Cruz. The mother of one of the victims said, "You are a filthy animal. You don't deserve to live another day." Cruz was ultimately sentenced to 34 consecutive life sentences without parole for all of his crimes. Ethan Crumbley, a 15-year-old teenager, carried out a school shooting at Oxford High School on November 30, 2021. Prior to the shooting, Ethan exhibited signs of depression and sent disturbing messages to his mother about his mental state, including statements about demons and haunting spirits in the house. He also filmed himself torturing animals, making Molotov cocktails, and even drew plans for a school shooting, which he had jokingly discussed with a friend. On November 30th, Ethan brought a semi-automatic handgun to school and began shooting at students. 3 students died at the scene, and a 4th died in the hospital. Ethan was arrested and faced numerous charges, including terrorism causing death and first-degree murder. He eventually pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Payton Gendron, 18, committed a horrific mass shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, on May 14, 2022, killing 10 people, all of whom were black. Prior to the shooting, Gendron had researched hate-motivated attacks and had threatened other students at his school. He was investigated for his threats and briefly placed in a hospital for a mental health evaluation, but was released shortly afterward. On the day of the shooting, Gendron brought a rifle into the supermarket and began shooting at people inside. After the shooting, 10 people were dead, and Gendron was arrested without incident. In November 2022, Gendron pled guilty to 15 state charges, including first-degree murder and hate-motivated crimes. During his sentencing hearing, Gendron expressed remorse, but it did little to ease the anger of the victims' families. The judge sentenced him to 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 90 years in prison. No. Gabe Parker, 15, carried out a brutal school shooting at Marshall County High School in Kentucky on January 23, 2013. The shooting began early in the morning as students were gathering in the Commons area. Parker used a Ruger handgun to kill 2 other 15-year-old students and injure 18 others. After firing, Parker discarded his weapon and fled, but a student recognized him and reported it to a teacher, leading to his arrest. When asked about his motive, Parker stated that he was an atheist and that his life, as well as others, had no purpose. He described the shooting as an experiment to see how students and society would react. On June 12, 2020, Parker was sentenced for first-degree murder and assault. During the trial, the families of the victims made emotional statements, showing their outrage and grief over his actions. Despite Parker showing no remorse, the harsh words from the victims' families created a tense atmosphere in the courtroom. In the end, Parker was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole after 20 years, plus an additional 70 years in prison. Thank you for watching today's video. The stories of violence and crime we've explored are just a small part of the serious issues society is facing. I hope that through this video, you have gained a better understanding of the negative impacts of violence and crime and found ways to help protect and guide the younger generation away from these regrettable actions. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments, like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. See you in the next one.